That's right, we have a mystery on our hands, a missing persons case, as a matter of fact. And when it comes to mystery in Sonic, you turn to the Chaotix Detective Agency to solve that mystery. But who do you turn to when the people that have gone missing are the Chaotix themselves? Though it's not actually these Chaotix that have gone missing, they're perfectly fine. The ones that have gone missing are their classic counterparts, and it seems like this disappearance has gone unnoticed by the general populace, and so it seems like it's gonna be up to me to do some detective work and get to the bottom of this whole thing. The question I'm here to answer is, what happened to the classic Chaotix? And I have a feeling that taking on this case is gonna reveal more mysteries and many dark hidden truths that some people would rather you not know, and perhaps you might rather you not know, but I am here to expose the truth once and for all. So let's begin the investigation. This whole thing started when Sega posted this image here, where we see the classic cast of Sonic having fun at an amusement park. And this image contains almost every single classic character. It's obviously got your main Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Eggman, and Metal Sonic, but it's also got some of the minor classic characters like Fang, Bean, and Bark, and even Honey is there in the background. But one thing you'll notice here is that, suspiciously, the Chaotix trio are entirely absent from this image, and that seems a little strange to me, considering this is clearly supposed to be some kind of celebration of the classic Sonic characters. Why would those three not be included in this image? That seems a little bit weird, doesn't it? And then we have the Sonic 30th Anniversary comic, which once again features most of the classic Sonic cast, including some that weren't present in that previous image, such as the Tails doll and Metal Knuckles. And it even features a team-up of all these Sonic characters coming together to defeat the bad guy. Once again, it feels like a celebration of classic Sonic for the 30th anniversary. And yet, once more, we find the classic Chaotix trio nowhere to be found in this entire comic. What is happening here? Everywhere you look that features classic Sonic characters, there seems to be a notable absence of Espio, Charmy, and Vector. The only recent acknowledgement of these characters that I could find anywhere is this one image of classic Espio celebrating Knuckles' Chaotix anniversary. And that's it. And maybe I'm looking into things too much, maybe this is just nothing, but I find that hard to believe. The amount of classic Sonic stuff that's been coming out in recent years without the Chaotix seems more than just coincidence to me. I mean, fuck, at this point, Honey has appeared in more stuff than the classic Chaotix characters, and she's barely even a real Sonic character. So what's going on here? Why are the Chaotix trio being excluded from all these classic Sonic things? What makes them so different? What makes them worthy of this kind of exile, of just ignoring their existence? At the surface, it seems like this is kind of just a random, pointless exclusion of these characters. It doesn't make any sense, but if you look a little bit deeper, you start to notice some things, cause the Chaotix characters are a little bit different than other classic Sonic characters. Because one thing that's been made very clear in recent years with Sonic is they want to keep the classic and modern brands of Sonic separate from each other. We can definitely see in how Sega treats the characters that they have definitely designated some characters are classic Sonic characters and will only appear in classic Sonic things, and some characters are modern Sonic characters and will only appear in modern Sonic things. Of course, the exceptions to this are the characters that already existed in both of these different iterations of Sonic, being the main cast: Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Metal Sonic, and Eggman. But that's the curious thing, isn't it? The Chaotix characters also do have classic and modern versions, so theoretically, these characters should be able to also exist in both versions of Sonic, yet for some reason they don't. Why is that? What makes the Chaotix characters different from our main Sonic cast? Well, as it turns out, there actually is a significant difference between these characters, because the other characters, when they went from classic to modern, they didn't actually change as characters. It was just a visual change, but everything about the characters themselves was the same. And this is not true for the Chaotix. When the Chaotix were converted to modern versions, they were completely changed as characters. They were essentially reinvented into new characters. If you read the manual of Knuckles Chaotix, then you see that the characterizations for Espio, Charmy, and Vector are totally different than their current versions. Espio's not a ninja, Charmy is described as being very mature, and so on and so forth. So when these characters were brought into the modern world of Sonic, the old versions of their characters were essentially thrown in the trash, and along with them, Knuckles Chaotix itself, the game where all these characters were introduced, was made non-canon, as obviously those versions of the characters now conflict with the modern versions of the characters. So perhaps that's the reason the Chaotix trio don't appear in classic Sonic stuff. Knuckles Chaotix is no longer canon, which means those characters are no longer canon until we get to their modern versions. However, that still doesn't exactly line up to me, because Espio was also featured in Sonic the Fighters, which also is the introduction of Bean Bark and technically Honey into the Sonic series. And those characters get to stick around, so clearly Sonic the Fighters exists in some capacity in the canon of classic Sonic. So where's Espio? He does have that one image of him, but he doesn't show up in anything else, and just because the game is no longer canon doesn't mean the characters have to stop existing in that universe, right? So I still find this to be an unsatisfactory explanation. It just doesn't line up for me. Especially considering the fact that they do treat classic Sonic and modern Sonic as almost two separate universes. You could very easily have it be that the classic versions of the Chaotix exist in the classic universe and the modern versions exist in the modern universe, and that would just be fine. Of course, nowadays they're going with the idea that classic is modern and it's just a time difference, but whatever. As I already said, that's clearly not actually true, because we're never gonna see crossover of classic characters and modern stuff, or vice versa. But then, thinking about this whole thing of the clear dichotomy between classic Sonic characters and modern Sonic characters, it got me wondering why that's even a thing in the first place, because clearly with the Chaotix characters, we can see that at some point they were okay with taking classic characters and bringing them into the modern version of Sonic. But they only did that once. They only did that with the Chaotix trio. They never did that again, and for decades at this point, they have completely ignored many classic Sonic characters, and they have just been completely gone. It wasn't until Sonic Mania revived classic Sonic stuff that we started to see characters like Fang start to show up again, but they are exclusively allowed to appear in classic Sonic works only. So what's the deal there? Why is there that split between classic Sonic characters and modern Sonic characters? Why can't we have a modern Fang, or a classic Rouge, or whatever? And I was thinking about this for quite a while until I realized something. Have you ever noticed that all of the characters that exist in modern Sonic are all Sonic Team characters created by Sonic Team themselves? Think about it. Think of all the classic characters that have never showed up again. Mighty and Ray are from Sega's Sonic the Hedgehog, not a Sonic Team game. Bean Bark and Honey are from Sonic the Fighters, not a Sonic Team game. Fang is from Sonic Triple Trouble, not a Sonic Team game. Hell, if you look on Sonic Channel, the official Japanese Sonic website, they have character bios for all the characters, but only for the modern characters, and look at who we have in the modern characters. Shadow, Rouge, Blaze, Cream, all these characters that were first shown off in Sonic Team games, or that were created by Sonic Team members. Even more obscure characters who have only ever appeared in one game are here, like Marine, Emerald, and Chip. But then a character like Fang, who has appeared in multiple Sonic games, has no bio. In fact, none of the characters that only exist in classic Sonic have bios. Now, isn't that a little bit suspicious? And realizing this, it started to make me wonder if maybe Sonic Team doesn't like characters that they themselves did not make, or at the very least doesn't want to use them. People have been asking for years, why do characters like Bean and all of those, why don't they appear in Sonic games anymore? Why don't they have modern redesigns, and why don't they show up in current Sonic games? It's always kind of just been a weird thing that those characters would never get used, but perhaps the reason that those characters don't show up in Sonic is because Sonic Team doesn't want those characters in Sonic. They don't want those characters to be a part of Sonic, because those characters were not made by Sonic Team. Those characters were made by other people doing other things with their own versions of Sonic. And maybe Sonic Team has a different idea of what they want Sonic to be, and those characters just do not fit into their version of Sonic. So they're just like, fuck it, we're just gonna ignore those characters. Those are not our Sonic characters, so we don't want them in our Sonic. Of course, there is one problem with this theory, which is that the Chaotix characters do exist in modern Sonic, so clearly Sonic Team is okay with taking characters that they did not create and incorporating them into their version of Sonic. Or are they? Because remember, when the Chaotix characters were incorporated into Sonic, they were completely transformed into essentially entirely different characters. And also, it's worth noting that earlier in development, Sonic Heroes, the games where the Chaotix characters got their modern reinterpretations, that game was originally supposed to have more non-Sonic Team characters. It was gonna have pretty much every single Sonic character that existed at that point. But a lot of those characters had to get cut from the final game, and so only the Chaotix trio ended up making it through. And I have to wonder if maybe part of the idea with Sonic Heroes was Sonic Team wanted to get a hold of all these non-Sonic Team characters and get control of them. We have the original versions of Espio, Charmy, and Vector that are non-Sonic Team characters, and based on Sonic Team's treatment of characters and other things, we can presume that they may have not liked those characters, and perhaps they didn't even like those characters existing in Sonic because they didn't make those characters. So they decide, alright, we're gonna take those characters, but we're going to turn them into our characters. We're gonna throw the old versions of the characters in the dumpster, and we're going to create new versions of them that are going to override the old versions, and now they are Sonic Team characters. This makes me think that had we seen those other classic characters realized in Sonic Heroes, I betcha they would be the exact same way. They'd probably be entirely new characters, rebooted and changed completely from what they used to be. It's only because they didn't end up in the game that those characters just ended up getting left by the wayside, and I guess Sonic Team was just like, fuck it, we don't even care about those characters, so we'll just leave them off in limbo. Another thing that makes me think this whole thing is that it's not just about the characters, but it's anything that was not made by Sonic Team has almost never been referenced in a Sonic Team game before. Just look at something like Sonic Generations. Both versions of that game are celebrations of Sonic's history, yet there are almost no references of any kind in either game to anything that was not created by Sonic Team. Like, one of the only examples would be these posters here, which are flat out telling you that those characters are gone. Almost everything else in both games is strictly pulling from only Sonic Team games. It's almost as if Sonic Team is trying to divorce anything that they did not make from the idea of Sonic. As if they want Sonic to be their Sonic made by them and nothing else. Now, granted, there have been a couple of things here and there that have shown up in Sonic Team games that were not made by Sonic Team, like, for example, Amy's hammer that first showed up in Sonic the Fighter, or Eggman's real name being Robotnik, taken from the American side of stuff, or Sonic eating chili dogs, taken from the American cartoons. There are a couple of things here and there, but there are incredibly few things in Sonic Team games that are not from Sonic Team games. Considering the decades of history that this series has and all of its different iterations, you think that there would be many, many more crossover references to other Sonic works, but there aren't. There's almost nothing. Again, it's as if Sonic Team wants to keep all those external Sonic medias away from their Sonic. However, then Sonic Mania comes around, a non-Sonic Team game, I should add, and this game now makes references to every classic Sonic game, including non-Sonic Team games, and now we start to see those old Sonic characters coming back, but again, it's exclusively in classic Sonic stuff. So at this point, it's led me to believe that Sonic Team is treating classic Sonic as like the dumping ground for the shit that they don't care about. That's why we're allowed to have characters like Fang and Bean and Honey and stuff showing up again, but only in classic Sonic stuff, in stuff that is separate from Sonic Team Sonic, from modern Sonic. And I think that is why the Chaotix characters no longer show up in classic Sonic works, because the Chaotix characters have been turned into Sonic Team characters, and so they don't want them in the dumping ground of things that they ignore. Sonic Team is trying to make it seem as if those characters do not exist, because those characters are now Sonic Team characters, and they exist in the modern Sonic Team version of Sonic. And I know this seems very conspiracy theory, but these things just seem to line up too well to me that I can't believe that there's actually nothing going on here, and the classic Chaotix characters not being there is purely coincidental. Like, I bet you if someone like Ian Flynn asked Sega if he could put the classic Chaotix characters in a classic Sonic comic, they'd be like, no, you're not allowed to use those characters anymore. We don't want them in classic Sonic. But then that got me thinking that's also probably why the Freedom Fighters are gone as well. Once again, so many people have been wondering, are we ever going to have Sally or Bunny or all those characters show up in Sonic games? Why aren't they in the comics anymore? And once again, I bet you it's because those are not Sonic Team characters, so they do not want them existing in Sonic anymore. I mean, why do you think they abruptly canceled the Archie comics and started with IDW? I bet you a part of that is because they wanted to completely eradicate everything that was not part of the Sonic Team vision of Sonic. There has been a clear effort in recent years by Sonic Team to kind of consolidate Sonic and get it more focused and get it closer to the game version of what Sonic is. Outside of the movies these days, everything that comes out for Sonic in terms of the extra media like cartoons and comics is relatively close to the game version, as opposed to back in the day where they could all just do whatever the hell they wanted and Sega seemed to not care. Nowadays, very clearly, there is something they want Sonic to be, and they do not want things outside of their vision of Sonic showing up. However, there is one last anomaly with this whole thing, which would be Styx, a character from Sonic Boom. She is not a game character, yet she does actually have a page on Sonic Channel, and she was even mentioned at the end of Sonic Frontiers, and in a way she kind of almost is treated like she is part of the Sonic game universe, which doesn't make any fucking sense. What's going on there? This completely breaks my entire theory, doesn't it, of them not wanting to have any non-Sonic Team characters show up in the Sonic universe, right? Well, actually, no, because as it turns out, Styx was created by the creators of Sonic Boom in collaboration with Sonic Team. They did contribute to the creation of that character, so technically, apparently in Sonic Team's eyes, Styx is a Sonic Team character, which is why she does kind of show up in the main Sonic universe, despite the fact she's not even from that continuity. Whereas the Freedom Fighters, those characters were made entirely separate from Sonic Team, and so evidently Sonic Team does not care about those characters. Post-investigation addendum to the report, after reviewing the evidence one more time, it seems that not only does Sonic Team not care about characters like the Freedom Fighters, but there appears to be some sort of class system in place for Sonic characters. Characters created by Sonic Team appear in modern Sonic games. Game characters not created by Sonic Team are relegated to classic games as second-class citizens, and characters not created by Sonic Team and not originally from games are just completely gone. Now, it's worth stating that recently it seems like things are starting to change a little bit with how Sonic Team feels about including characters from external media that they didn't create. Because, as we see in like Sonic Forces Speed Battle, that has characters from the movies as well as the IDW comics. So maybe now that Sonic Team has a more focused, controlled vision of what every Sonic thing is, they're more willing to allow characters from other stuff to show up in the main Sonic universe. But I bet you for older characters, nothing is going to change. I bet you the Freedom Fighters are never going to show up again. And I bet you the classic Chaotix characters are also gone. And I bet you the characters like Fang, Bean, Bark, all them, they're probably never going to get modern versions and are never going to show up in a modern Sonic thing. And vice versa. We're never going to see classic Shadow or classic Blaze. Those things are just not going to happen because Sonic Team doesn't want those things to happen. So there you go, that's the conclusion of my investigation. Quite an interesting case this one was. I'm certainly not happy about the truth that's been discovered here because I think it's really stupid. I want to see the classic Chaotix characters show up in new classic Sonic stuff, and I'm sure many other people want to see the Freedom Fighters show up and people want to see classic Shadow and various other things, but unfortunately, I just don't think that's gonna happen. Them's the facts, bro. As a detective, it's my job to expose the truth, even if that truth ends up being pretty ugly. So the mysterious disappearance of the classic Chaotix, the official record of this case? What classic Chaotix? I don't know what you're talking about.